Welcome to Andrew Talks with your host, Andrew.
Hello, and welcome back to another Angel Talks. This is going to be a very special edition because it's going to be something which I wanted to present at the Adobe Summit. I submitted these recommendations, but unfortunately, I was not chosen as one of the rock stars. So instead, I decided that I wanted to record this and put it up just before so I can be the Rockstar's opening act. Now, my name is Andrew, and I choose the theme of comedy because that is my favorite genre of music to listen to. And for my very first tip, I want to talk about validating data layer accuracy in Adobe Launch. So first, I want to talk about how accurate is your digital data and is your time even being spent wisely? So I'm just curious if any of these things happen to you. For example, do you have any unexpected values that come up or behavior such as having number two come up first? Do you have multiple formats variations of the exact same value going into your data? Are there any unexpected data for the event that is being pushed on? Do you have data missing? Does the business even trust the data that is being captured? Are you spending more time debugging the data than using the data? If any of these sound familiar to you, well, many of us have those exact same problems. One of the ways that we have found to be able to help out with this is by focusing on the source. In digital analytics, the source is the data layer because that is where the data is being pushed on for us to capture and send it on to the different systems. So, why does the data layer accuracy matter? Well, I wanted to get at the heart of every meaningful analytics program and something I have been focusing on for a while now, and that is this data layer accuracy. A data layer isn't just a technical component, it's the single source of truth that powers your reporting, optimization, and personalization efforts. When the data layer is accurate, consistent, and reliable, every downstream system, from analytics being captured, GTM, attribution platforms, marketing and remarketing, can do their job with confidence. But when it is inaccurate, everything downstream is compromised. Insights become skewed, personalization becomes misfired, and decisions, which often are high value, business critical decisions, are made on flawed assumptions. Now, as a technical analyst, you can go and try to fix this within Adobe Launch, but then you're just adding more technical debt onto it. You're essentially putting on a plaster on a cut that should have had stitches to help heal it. And it matters because there are so many different ways of pushing the exact same value on. So while the content itself may be accurate, you have to remember that every character is critical on this. Whenever I used to work at Sky, one of the things that I remember my managers telling me was at the time they had over six different ways of putting Sky One into the data. And that's just something as simple as Sky One. And on here, I have many different ways of how we could have captured Six Nations Ireland versus Scotland, 14th of March. And this could have been things from item name with a underscore, or item space name in capital letters, or item name joined together, or name of item, or description. There are so many different ways of pushing this on. And you need to be able to quickly identify whenever these things happen, and ideally before it gets into production. So accurate data layer means fewer implementation bugs, faster QA cycles, and significantly lower long-term maintenance costs. Analysts should spend their time generating the insights, not cleaning up these issues. And the data layer schema creates a foundation that scales as your business, your websites, and your customer journey evolves. So in short, data accuracy from what is set to the format it is set matters because it protects the integrity of your data, the quality of your decisions and actions, and the efficiency of your team. So how clean is your data layer? What type of foundation do you have? Do you have a pristine lake, or is it more like a messy swamp that you're constantly using Adobe Launch to try to clean up? Which of these would you rather jump in and put your faith in? Most of the time, developers are told what data that should go in, but not a blueprint for how all variations of that data should go in. A data layer schema ensures that there is a thought out process that can be repeatedly replicated with clear guidelines of what should be sent, when it should be sent, for all events across the state. So, what are the benefits of data layer schema? Well, it increases consistent, predictable data. As the dictionary dictates how, when, and why data should be sent, it also stipulates the format that it should be sent. This increases the possibilities that data will be going in consistently in a predictable manner. It also increases the possibilities to catch issues earlier. I like to think of it as more of like a filter. You're catching the errors as soon as possible, shifting them out, ensuring that only clean data goes into your production environment. Is a tool for evaluating the data as it is being pushed on. Putting this into your development environment means that errors can be flagged during development. And better off, it means that you have the ability to actually divide up the work more evenly. And there is a trick to run this at scale across your entire state, which I will cover at the end. It also ensures that there's clear governance. So now that we have the logic for how the data layer is supposed to work, we are able to automate the process for evaluating that it is set correctly. Imagine within the console log notification that something did not work correctly. And since you do have this clear governance, you also have a much better chance of not accidentally sending data that is going to get you in hot waters with the data governance team. Additionally, this blueprint can be easily updated to match needs of the future, adding new events, removing unneeded fields, or add new variables to existing events. There needs to be one person responsible for the schema and ensuring everyone is aware when updates are required, when they are completed, and what it means for each team. Next, it supports privacy compliance. As there is a strict structure in place of what can or cannot be captured, with validation of the values, ensuring non compliant data is not captured is increased. Can add in a not pattern within here as well to verify that postcodes, zip, phone numbers, credit card, or other sensitive data is not accidentally captured within the data layer. It gives you the full structure to be able to determine how much structure and enforcement do you want to give in this. So, do you want to make it more lax or do you want to make it as strict as possible? Essentially, data layer schema transforms your data layer from best effort to an engineered system. Now, to apply this within Adobe Launch, it is very simple. I actually did this using only one rule, and it's called load schema. You will load this at the very top. In the first action, you're going to go ahead and call the library down and load it in. Now, for this, we're using draft 7. Next, you want to go ahead and initiate it, and we're going to tell it to allow all errors, allow union types, and set for ES5 to true. And if most importantly, we have a logger to ensure that we have a way to tell it to push it onto the console. Finally, we want to set the schema. On here, I just called it a B2B data layer schema. And then we initialize it. Now, in the last one, this is where we set all of the fun things to be able to go through and determine how we want data to be captured in the console. How do we want it to format it? Where do we want to push off to? And this is something which I'm not comfortable to give out because it is our own personal IP. I'm sure that you can go and find some more information on how to utilize this further. From there, we want to apply the data schema within Adobe Launch. Now, for this, you would go into the data element and we want to return the entire schema. I prefer putting it over here within the data elements because now we are not going to accidentally delete one of our other codes. This is something which we learned how to do, and it's very important that when you do this, you are returning the entire object. So you just do return and put your whole JSON schema straight in. Now, some secrets I have learned, especially in the last year, was one, you can push errors to observe point as a pixel. This way, they could pick it up a lot more cleanly and send it on. Next, when variables could exist or not, add in any of condition. This way, you're telling it that either one of these needs to be true. It either needs to be a string with at least one character that matches your pattern, or it's not a string, it's not an integer, it's not a number, it's not an object, it's not a rate, it's not a boolean, it's none of the main ones. That way, you have the ability to pass it in undefined. If statements need to be added at the very first step needed. So especially if you're trying to go into a nested array, you need to be able to put that if statement at the very top and start digging your way down to be able to add in more conditions. This is very important, especially if you're using a event-driven data layer. Set event checks at start, ensuring the right schema is checked and avoid false errors. So one of the things I do at the very beginning is I use if statements at the very top to say if the event is equal to view, then you want to load the view one and make it required. Or if it is product, then load the product one. And finally, remember, this is not just for evaluation. It is a dictionary. Be as detailed as possible with your descriptions and comments. Work with your developers to ensure that you are even detailing where the source of this information is coming from. At the next time you work with a developer, it's not going to be that same developer that you've been working with right now. There's a lot more of them than they are of us. So make that dictionary as detailed as possible so any future developers can work on this without any issues. We also use another launch property. So we have our main Adobe launch property for production, but then we use another Adobe launch property to be able to load the data layer schema. This works really well with things like observe point, where you can then load that one in. And that way you're only focusing on the data layer validation instead of is it actually a issue within your Adobe launch code. So you want to check, is the data layer accurate? So you load the other one on if you're only wanting to validate the data layer on your own. Now you could add it to your main library. And we have done this before where we just check to make sure that it's not in the production environment because you don't want to slow it down. Or maybe you want to check if a cookie gets manually added on. So you can then check it in production yourself along with everything else. Now, we do recommend using tools like Observe Point. This will help you scale because your website is large and there's only so many pages you can check yourself. This allows you to set up a manual setup scan for your site for both pre and post production and is perfect for governance, audits, compliance, and pre release QA. I've also started working with another company called Tracking Plan. And this allows you to add a new JavaScript onto your site, allowing visitor traffic to generate your audits. So you don't even have to worry about setting up the paths or any of the scans. It would do it automatically. And it's perfect for live monitoring, campaign safety net, rapid detection, and automated data layer schema creations. And these two tools, they are similar, but very much in separate camps. You could have both of them, or you could choose one or another. You just have to choose which one works best for your site. One thing I like about Observe Point is the fact that you're not adding additional weight to your site. But I like Tracking Plan because now you have the ability to check things at scale in real time. And I'm going to always love the feedback that we got from one of our clients. It was, you really must take your hat off to the Loop Horizon team for what they've built here. We've got ongoing validation of all of our specifications, the dev and QA teams have a reliable way of checking that our requirements have been met, and the Azure Point integration gives us peace of mind monitoring. So they mentioned that this revolutionized how they are doing things. So in summary, you want to start at the source. The data layer schema validation is to protect that the data layer values and structure matches your expected setup. Clean data layer makes success more possible. It improves your data quality. By moving the data validation as early in the process as possible, development is preferred. This enables the developers to validate there are no errors before passing on the validation to the analytics team. One of the questions that you could ask whenever they say, "Can you check this?" You could ask them, "Did you confirm that there are no data layer errors caused by the data layer schema?" If they say no, ask them to go and double check their work before it comes to you. And it gives efficient development because developers gain the efficiency by having a full dictionary of what is expected and where it comes from. Additionally, giving them the ability to test and validate instead of waiting for you to confirm if it is correct. Let's be honest, we are normally the bottleneck because there's so few of us. So giving them the ability to have that confidence first and telling us up front, hey, I've done it, I've checked it, there's no errors, here is the proof, will go a long way. And finally, you should look at automated test validations. Adding this into validation tools like Observe Point or Tracking Plan enables the team to automate validation across the entire website at scale. And PS, you can have this run on your QA environment. So you can test the QA environment before it goes into production to confirm that whenever that does move into production, that there are no issues. For my second tip, I want to talk about validating Adobe Data's health. Now, even with the JSON schema and knowing that you have pristine data coming in, you have the top ingredients. Just because you have excellent ingredients does not mean that you'll end up with a great dish. Just because you have a perfect data layer doesn't mean you're going to have perfect data. And that's because there is that one section where you're taking that data, possibly manipulating it, and then sending it on to the different tools. What we want to do is catch errors as early as possible. You do not expect there to be any issues when you are doing this, but just like you get regular checkups for your own health, you should do the same for your digital data collection. Now, I use an iPhone and an Apple Watch, and I love the fact that I get updated trend changes. So recently, it mentioned that my heart rate changed, and I immediately opened up the app and I investigated it more. And this was temporary, and all was fine, but it got my attention. It called me out. They said, "Hey, you should look into this." And this is what the alerts is for. When does the trend creep into the anomaly? And you should look at it immediately. This is what we have done. We do not want to wait till the end of the day, or depending on when it starts or goes wrong, it may be 2 days later that it finally gets picked up through any other tools. So get notified now when something becomes an issue. So we have hourly alerts set up for Adobe Analytics, and we went through and we chose and picked which ones we thought were going to be most important. And this is great to be able to see if there was something that goes up or down, when did it happen, and you could determine, hey, maybe I should look into this more. The other is we use a report board to build our dashboard to create this health dashboard. And as you can see, I've anomalized the metrics and I asked for some AI tools to go through and put some fake numbers in and fake trends just so that we could talk about this more openly. Now you can push in as much data as you want in here and determine how much effort you want to look into this. We went ahead and we pushed in what we thought was important. So how often does a metric get pushed on? How often does a particular value get set? And we could trend this over time. And speaking of trending over time, one of the things that we talked about was look at different trends because looking at from a 90-day to a 30-day to a 14-day trend does give you completely different values. If you look at the 90-day, the 30-day, and 14-day average, that's when you start seeing the differences. And the variations does greatly change. Having these different ones will mean that you can get a better understanding of how is it performing. And one of the things you may notice is there's a lot of colors on here because I love conditional formats. It really catches your eyes. And think about it as a driver, when you're driving down a residential road, there's a lot of things that you have to look out for, but it's really hard to see it. But you know what? What if the windscreen could actually highlight here where are the potential errors to make sure that you are avoiding these errors? And that's something which I thought was really great. It literally shows you how easy it is to potentially miss errors or issues. But if you have the ability to have something highlighted, it does bring it to your attention. So what do we track in both? Well, in the health dashboard, we capture things like the raw KPI metrics. How many times does an EVAR get set? What are the key variable values? And we may pull the top 5 or the top 10, depending on how many different variations there are. We look at the marketing channels to make sure that there's no sudden changes in how many instances are they being sent or how many orders there are. And then for the hourly alerts, we look at things such as what was the visitor's overall new repeat? How many visits are there? How many page views are there? How many product views, product ads, basket views, checkout? We focus on the KPI. So what are the key metrics that are going through this? And we look at error tracking. I cannot tell you how many times when these alerts have came up and it alerted that something was going wrong, and we were able to resolve it within 90 minutes. How many times would you be able to catch something within 90 minutes of it going in? And one thing to keep in mind is the report builder dashboard is a living dashboard. This is not a dashboard that is created and forgotten. It is updated as a new metrics and variables are deemed important or unnecessary or becomes necessary. We are currently on version 7 of the dashboard as new requirements and new views are required. And more importantly, you need to make sure that you're looking at it. It's not something that you save for the end of the day. You schedule it for the beginning of the day and you make sure that you look at it within the first hour of getting there. So that way that can determine if you need to alter your day to fix an issue that has just cropped up. So in summary, multiple checks are preferred. The health dashboard runs daily to check daily statistics, but the alerts are to check intraday impacts that needs to be addressed immediately. Your developers are deploying things throughout the day. You may have just released something at the beginning of the day and you want to know, did it work correctly? You can do your own checks, but having this being able to be used against what the clients are doing right now is very important. Multiple granularities tells different stories. So we always used to use just the 9-day trend until a peak hit. This constantly showed we were near minimum levels of traffic due to the sudden spike that occurred within the last 9 days. So looking at a monthly and biweekly shows better trends if there is an issue to resolve. Now, conditional formatting helps draw us the attention. Having something that can clearly catch your eye to know if this needs to be looked at is a huge time saver and is one that I am very much a pro component for. And a spark line says the most. By adding that spark line for each line item, it helps clearly show if something is going up or down, by how much. So looking at that line has also helped me be able to determine how much of the urgency this is. And now I will return you to your regular scheduled line so we can all just eat it. And if you know, you know. Hopefully next year I will return to the big stage. Thanks for listening. Stay weird and keep rocking your data.